Hi, everybody. My name is Lillian Ruiz, and I am the instructor for English 221. Welcome. So, what I'm going to do in this video is what I would normally do in a face-to-face class, and actually, I try to duplicate as much as possible in my online classes what I would do in a face-to-face class. So, today is going to be devoted to our class introduction, where I can review the class syllabus and the class outline and respond to any questions that you might have about the course, and then we can begin in earnest with our next class session. So I'm assuming that you know how to get onto Moodle, or else you wouldn't be watching this video. And if you are on Moodle, you can see that our course is set up with the section that begins with General. And if you were to go onto that section, what you will see are basically several icons of elements of the course that are important over the course of the semester. And the first icon in blue is syllabus and other documents. And this is where I have posted our syllabus, our course outline, and I would be posting any documents that I would be distributing in handout form in a face-to-face class. And then past class sessions. And what I do is I basically leave the current week up in Moodle for you to access easily. And then I retire that week into the folder entitled past class sessions so that you can access the entire semester, but it's only the current week that is visible on the front page of Moodle. Discussion form. So what I try to do in the discussion form is to duplicate what would happen in a class discussion. So I post a question in the class discussion form. Your response to that question, I count as attendance, which I will be talking a little bit more about as the class progresses. And basically, I like to ask discussion forum questions that don't necessarily have right or wrong answers, but that really require you to think or to show your reasoning. So, if you were to read all of those discussion forum responses, what you would get is basically the class discussion that we might have if we were having a face-to-face class. And then you'll see that, and both of these icons are a little bit over to the right because they aren't as important necessarily. One is called optional chat, and it's just that, optional. But if you ever wanted to chat with me or chat with your classmates, I've set aside an area on our Moodle site to be able to do that. And you'll also see, and this is the last icon, the optional Zoom. And in the optional Zoom, you will see my Zoom contact information if you ever wanted to Zoom with me. So underneath that, what you'll be able to see is our first week. And as I said, I'll have each week available for you on our Moodle site, right on the front page as the semester progresses. And I, of course, will retire the previous week when it is appropriate. So we are in week 1, so there's nothing to retire at this point. We are on the 24th, I believe. Is that correct? Of January. And we are moving to soon, February. And if this class were meeting in a face-to-face situation, we would be meeting twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays. So basically, I'm going to be posting these kinds of videos and class information twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, which I will be talking about in a little bit more depth in a few minutes. And you can see that what our topic is for today is the introduction, where I wanted to review the syllabus and the other documents folder, and also let you know that I don't use all of the elements of Moodle. So I do not use the Moodle grading program. And I'll talk about how it is that you're going to be getting grades and assignments in a few minutes. Your attendance question for today, probably not too surprising, which you would be answering on your class discussion forum by Wednesday, is to briefly introduce yourself to the class and feel free to upload pictures or videos, but not required. So the idea is that in a face-to-face class, we would basically spend a little bit of class time introducing ourselves or a partner. So here we can do it through Moodle. So what I wanted to do was to review the syllabus and course outline. And again, they can both be found in the general section in the first folder, blue, that's entitled Syllabus and Other Documents. What I recommend is that you print out a hard copy of the syllabus and also the course outline, because it's always good to have a reference of that. I have a hard copy right in front of me that I will be going through with you. And that said, you can see that at the top of this syllabus, I've just got some general contact information. That my name is Lillian Ruiz. Most people call me Lillian. I'm pretty informal, but feel free to call me whatever you're comfortable with. My phone number, 775-1236. That'll get you to my office. My email, which is Ruiz, my surname, Ruiz, @gcc.mass.edu. Little piece of trivia about my email. It does not include a first initial, the way most emails do, because when I started at GCC, believe it or not, we did not have an email system in place. I started in 1993. It's hard to believe so much time has gone by. And when we were initially given email addresses, they were based just on surname until we very quickly realized that that would lead to a lot of duplications, which is when the first initial was instituted. So my office is in North 328A. It's in the ID Center, the Inclusion and Diversity Center. I encourage you to visit. So it's a dedicated space for students who support the ideals of inclusion and diversity. Everybody's welcome. There's a little kitchenette there. There's a little study area there. There is a common room there where there's some soft furnishings, some board games, and my office is also housed there as well, if you ever wanted to drop in and talk about topics of inclusion or diversity. So I encourage you to visit. And you'll also see my office hours, which may or may not be convenient for you since you are an online student. Mondays and Wednesdays, 9:30 to 10:30. Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10:30 to 11:30, or by appointment. So those are the times that, barring my needing to go to a meeting, I would be available in my office if you wanted to meet with me in person. So the next section of the syllabus talks about textbooks. The good news is that you don't necessarily have to use a specific textbook in this class. After all, we're talking about Shakespeare, and he wrote hundreds of years ago, and you can find lots of Shakespearean editions. If you're curious as to the edition I use the Riverside Shakespeare. I'm very fond of this edition because it was the edition that was used with me when I was an undergraduate student. I believe it is now out of print, but you can find used copies. So basically, any edition with good footnotes is what you want, because the footnotes are going to be important, because sometimes Shakespearean language is difficult to understand. They would have used words differently than the way that we would use today. And what we will do in the next class is talk a little bit about how language was used during Shakespeare's time. And I will also provide you with websites. And I'm going to do that throughout the semester. I'm going to provide you with websites for all of the Shakespearean plays and sonnets that we're going to be reading. But I'm a bit of a dinosaur, so I really like the idea of having paper so that you can interact with it. And there is a note that it's assumed you'll have a good dictionary and thesaurus, and we've got those loaded into our computers, but having access to it as opposed to actually using it regularly can be two very different things. And yes, there's a good amount of not only reading, but writing in this class. And the thesaurus is wonderful to help you with your writing because it gives you synonyms, words with similar meanings, so that basically you don't have to repeat yourself. And it also sometimes gives you antonyms, words with opposite meanings. And the dictionary will do more than what a spell check does. Yes, it'll help you with spelling, but it'll also help you with pronunciation and parts of speech, definitions. So those are really two excellent resources to use as a writer. So, the course description, just to remind you about what it was that you signed up for, and this is from our course catalog, is that this class is a critical study of a selected group of plays by Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote a lot of plays, so we're only going to be reading a handful. And we are going to be approaching these plays by theme, and we're also going to give some attention to contemporary presentations or adaptations. Ultimately, Shakespeare was meant to be performed, which is something that we'll talk about next class. So it's going to be really important for us to see performance. Ideally, we'd see live performance. Logistically, that's just too difficult. But luckily, we can rely on technology. There is a prerequisite on this for this course. So the assumption is that you've taken what we call a GCC Comp 2, English 112, English 114, or English 116, some sort of introduction to literature class so that you already have an understanding about how to write a paper and about literature and how to analyze literature. So now our focus is going to be specifically about Shakespearean literature. And our learning outcomes as a result of successfully completing this course. You should appreciate Shakespearean drama as enjoyable, yes, enjoyable, significant, and relevant. And I know that Shakespeare comes with a lot of negative baggage, and part of my goal this semester is to take away some of those negative associations. And yes, Shakespeare can be challenging, but Shakespeare wrote for the masses. It was the television of the day. So it's meant to be entertaining. And the fact that we still read and watch Shakespeare shows how significant and relevant it is. In fact, every semester I'm always blown away when I teach this class about how relevant the plays are to what's happening in our contemporary society. We'll also examine the various types of Shakespearean drama. He wrote basically what we call comedies, histories, tragedies, and tragic comedies. So what we're going to need to do in the next couple classes is define what those genres are and what elements make up those genres. And he also wrote sonnets, which was a very specific kind of poetry, and we'll also talk about that as well. We'll learn how to read and understand Renaissance English. I liken it to a foreign language that we know maybe 90% of. So we know most of it, but not all of it. And you don't necessarily have to know everything word for word and translate word for word. So the idea behind Renaissance English, believe it or not, is that it becomes more comfortable as you spend more time with it. And I know you might be skeptical, but I've had too many students in the ending of the semester affirm that that's exactly what's happened to them, that I know this to be the case. To identify major themes and issues in the dramas, to recognize the relationship between Shakespearean plays and our present day world, and to improve oral and written communication skills. And I say this on all of my syllabi. And yes, I am an English teacher, but I also teach communications classes. I also teach public speaking classes. So I teach a little bit of everything. And yes, I'm the one who teaches the class in horror film. So if you are ever interested in analyzing horror film from an academic perspective, I'm the person to come talk to. In fact, I'm offering a section of that class this semester. I believe it's Thursday evening. Not exactly sure about that. I have to look into that. But I'm pretty sure it's Thursday evening. But at any rate, it's CMN 201. So, in terms of thinking about English 221, however, this class offers a general introduction to the content and techniques of Shakespearean drama. We will study representative sonnets, comedies, histories, tragedies, and tragic comedies. And our class emphasizes critical thinking, critical reading, critical writing. Critical not as a criticism and being negative, but as an asking questions, interpreting, analyzing. Or what I liken to what oftentimes toddlers do very well, asking questions, especially the question why. I've oftentimes said that the difference between high school and college is that high school is about what, while college is about trying to determine why. And as a class, we'll strive to appreciate the aesthetic and literary merits. So, what will the procedures be for this online class? And as I indicated earlier, I want to try to duplicate as much as possible what I would do in a face to face class. So basically, I'm going to post a video of myself, much like this one, discussing the class material at the time that our class would normally meet in person. And if we were meeting in person, we would be meeting on Monday and Wednesday at 8 a.m. So you can expect that you will have a video available on Monday and Wednesday by 8 a.m. And honestly, I'm going to try to post that the night beforehand for any of you eager beavers, but you should have access on Monday, Wednesday by 8 o'clock a.m., if not earlier. And then you have 48 hours to watch that video for that class. Each video is about, I don't know, maybe a half hour to 45 minutes, depending on the class. And then answer its corresponding attendance question in our class discussion form. And certainly, if you need additional time to respond to the discussion forum question, feel free to ask me for an extension. I'll be happy to grant it to you. But what would be ideal is within that 24-hour, or I'm sorry, that 48-hour window, you've responded to that discussion forum question. So what you would basically see is in written form what we might have discussed in class. And I use your response as attendance for that particular class. And then in terms of your interacting with your peers, you're not necessarily required to in the discussion forum. Any additional interaction you have with your classmates in the discussion forum is considered participation and would be similar to participating in a live class, where some students are very vocal and they raise their hand frequently, and some are much more quiet, and that's fine as well. So I know some students learn best by participating, others learn best by listening. So you can decide or how much and how little you want to participate. You are required, however, to read everyone's response and my responses in turn, because I will be responding to all of you. And that'll give you a really good idea of what we would have discussed in a class discussion forum. And then any written work that we would have, rather than obviously giving me hard copies, you would be submitting that electronically. So things like papers or the final exam, which I'll discuss in a moment, you would be sending that actually to my email address. And that's because my grading program works best with my email address. Again, my email being Ruiz, R-U-I-Z, at gcc.mass.edu. Sending that via PDF so that I can evaluate that. And please use your GCC email address when you are sending me assignments so that my email doesn't mistakenly put your email into spam. So, course requirements. Obviously, you're expected to do all the reading and writing assignments by the due date. There will be 2 out-of-class papers assigned, one approximately midway through the semester, and then one towards the ending of the semester. So this gives us a good amount of time to talk about Shakespeare. And I'll be talking about papers soon, but again, I'm just giving you a holistic view of the class. There will also be a final exam that is cumulative, but it is open book, open notes. If we were in a face-to-face situation, you would have approximately 2 hours to take that final. So in a online situation, I'll give you 24 hours to take that final, but you don't need 24 hours. I would expect you to devote about 2 hours or so. Again, open book, open notes. And if you have any kind of special learning needs, please come talk with me as soon as possible to discuss any assistance that would be helpful to you. And in fact, underneath that is GCC's Institutional Services Disability Statement that I wanted to read to you, that Greenfield Community College values inclusion, equal access to its programs and activities. It's committed to fostering an environment of respect and full participation. That the goal is to create learning environments that are equitable, inclusive, and welcoming. So if there are aspects of the instruction or design of this course that result in barriers to your inclusion or accurate assessment or achievement, please notify me as soon as possible. And if you're a student with a disability and you need a reasonable academic accommodation, please contact the Office of Disability Services, and the information is there in the syllabus. So attendance, as I said, that I'm going to be evaluating through your responses to the class discussion form. Class activity and discussion, the discussion form is extremely important. You really can't make that up. So absences and tardiness will be negatively reflected in your participation grade. While each case is different, anything more than 2 absences could lower your grade. Excessive absences could even result in failure. So If it turns out that you can't respond to a discussion forum question within the deadline, please ask for an extension. Consultations, you can meet with me during office hours or you can make an appointment. And papers. All papers, as I said, are due via PDF on the day specified to my email. And the information I have in the syllabus is just some general pieces of formatting information, that the paper should be typed and double spaced with 1-inch borders. Hopefully this sounds familiar from your previous English class. Pages should be numbered, and there should be a cover page on the paper, which is just a separate sheet of paper that lists, or a separate screen in this instance, that lists the title, your name, the course and section number, my name, and the due date, which of course we'll talk about a little bit more when assignments come up. Late work. Late papers will lower your grade by 1 full grade, and no late paper will be accepted after 1 week has elapsed, unless you made other arrangements with me beforehand. So please do ask for an extension if necessary. Always keep a copy of any important work, such as a paper that you submit, and I will be submitting suggested paper assignments throughout the term, and also inviting you to create your own paper assignment, but you would need to have that approved by me. I'm thinking that your average paper would be approximately 4 to 5 pages long. My papers are critical papers, so I'm not going to be asking you to use any outside resources. This is based on your own interpretation. And all students have the option to revise the first paper if they so choose, because I know that the first paper is a learning exercise. So if you're content with your grade after I return your first paper, well, then you've completed the assignment. But if you wanted to revise for a higher grade, you could take my suggestions and my feedback into account for a revision. And I ask that you submit in that revision along with the original evaluated paper with my comments. And then what ends up happening is you get the higher of the 2 grades, which should be the grade of the revision. And late papers can't be revised. Yet another reason to ask for an extension if you can't make a deadline, because once you ask for an extension, it's not late. So there's a section here on plagiarism that I'm going to be skipping and talking about this next class, and then going to the grading section. So 25% is your grade. Or 25% is your participation grade, I should say. So that's answering the discussion forum, questions, any kind of in-class assignments or activities that we might have. So that's a significant portion of your grade. And that's deliberate so that you're interacting. Paper number 1, 25%. Again, approximately 4 to 5 pages, but as we will discuss, it can be as long or short as you'd like it to be. And it is a paper you can rewrite for a higher grade. Paper number 2, 25%. It'll be the same length and the same kind of paper, critical paper, just on a different text that we would have studied in the semester. You probably wouldn't have time to do a revision for that because it'll be due at the very ending of the semester. But the idea is that the first paper is the learning exercise, so you wouldn't need a revision for the second paper because you would have already learned how to write a paper. And then that final exam, which will be an essay exam, and there will be choice of essay prompts. And it is open book, open notes, and I expect you to devote perhaps 2 hours or so to that. That is 25%. And for an A, excellent, a B, good, C, satisfactory. Yes, I'm aware there are other grades that follow, but I like to focus on those first 3. And then you'll also see that there are some criteria for essay evaluation. In other words, when an A looks like the excellent, as opposed to the B, which is good, as opposed to the C, the satisfactory, or the less than satisfactory and unsatisfactory. We can talk a little bit more about that as the semester progresses. Because I wanted to transition over to the course outline. The course outline is another document in your syllabus and other documents folder. And again, I suggest that you print up a hard copy of this so that you can see what the outline is for this semester. And at the top of the outline, I've indicated that dates and assignments might be subject to change. So what I've done is I've planned out the entire semester. And of course, if there is inclement weather or something or another, we could have a change in these dates. But this is what we will do by the ending of the semester. So assigned readings should be completed before the dates indicated, ideally, because these are the dates that I'm going to be discussing these topics. So you can see that I've divided the class up into weeks, and again, every Monday and Wednesday, because every Monday and Wednesday at 8 a.m. I would be posting a video. And today, which is Monday, the 27th, is our introduction, where I'm just basically reviewing the class with you. Wednesday, on the 29th, notice you don't have any reading scheduled. I wanted to talk about Shakespearean biography. I'll be providing you with some websites as well. But this is a good time for you to begin getting ahead in the reading. Week 2, and I see the first week and a half or so as introduction. I wanted to talk about Shakespearean biography. I wanted to talk about Shakespearean stage and language. That's what we're going to do on the 3rd of February, which is Monday, Shakespearean stage. Because you should have read by Wednesday the 5th the following sonnets, and these are short poems by Shakespeare, and they are numbered, and you would be reading number 15, 18, 20, 127, 130, 151. So this is your introduction to Shakespearean language and also some of Shakespeare's major themes. And I'm going to be talking about those sonnets on that class on the 5th and also on the class of the 10th. And while I'm talking about those sonnets, what you should be doing is reading ahead for our first play. And the first play we're going to be doing is A Midsummer Night's Dream. And if you've taken my introduction to literature class or my literature and film class, then you are familiar with A Midsummer Night's Dream. And we've got multiple classes that are devoted to Midsummer Night's Dream because it is rather lengthy. And I also wanted to talk about performance and provide performance for you to view, as well as talk about text itself. So I can tell you what's ideal, but I know that sometimes the world is not ideal. What would be ideal is by the 12th of February, which is Wednesday, when we begin our unit on A Midsummer Night's Dream, that you would have read A Midsummer Night's Dream in its entirety. So that as we're spending the next 2 weeks discussing A Midsummer Night's Dream, you are reading the next play, which happens to be Much Ado About Nothing. And you can see that in week 4, one of the classes, the 17th of February, which is a Monday, is President's Day. There's no classes then. And that we will finish Midsummer Night's Dream around the 26th of February and move to our next play. That puts us into the 6th week of the semester, and that next play would be Much Ado About Nothing. So ideally, by the 3rd of March, you would have read Much Ado About Nothing in its entirety. So as we spend the next 2 weeks talking about Much Ado, you're obviously reading the next play. And of course, for each of these classes, Mondays and Wednesdays, in addition to a class video, and I'll always post the class notes underneath the video, much like the notes that I might put on a whiteboard in class, you'll have a discussion form question for your attendants to respond to. Week 8 is our spring break. So that's March 17th and 19th. And then we go to week 9, where we begin with a history play. So our first 2 plays are going to be comedies, Midsummer Night's Dream and Much Ado About Nothing. And hopefully by the 24th, you would have read, the 24th of March, you would have read Richard II in its entirety, and you would be reading the next play. And notice that I have paper number 1 due by the 24th of March, because by that point we'll be midway through the semester. So you should, more than midway through the semester. So you should have had a paper submitted in by that point. Your first paper will be about comedies. So you can write about A Midsummer Night's Dream or Much Ado About Nothing. There is also a possibility of writing about the sonnets, which is how we are beginning the class. But I have what I call rolling deadlines. In other words, this is really the last date that you should hand in paper number 1, the 24th. Feel free to hand it in early. Early papers are encouraged. So once we start talking about the text, I will be providing you with sample paper topics, and you can actually begin constructing a paper and submitting it in to me. But certainly if you haven't submitted in a paper by the 24th of March, I'm beginning to get a little bit anxious because so much of the semester has elapsed at this point. And then this paper I had put immediately after spring break. So please don't think dark thoughts about me during spring break. But I encourage all of you to submit in this paper before spring break so that you don't have to worry about it during spring break. And you can see we've got multiple classes devoted to Richard II. until we get to the 7th of April, which is where we transition over to our tragedies, which is probably Shakespeare's most famous plays. Richard II is an example of a Shakespearean history play. And we are reading Macbeth, which happens to be Shakespeare's shortest play, and I think we'll appreciate that when we get to that point in the semester. And again, while we're talking about Macbeth, I'm hopeful that you would have read it in its entirety during our first date that we discussed Macbeth on the 7th of April, so that you're at home reading the next play, which happens to be Othello. And this is really where we end the class. There is a Patriots Day on the 21st of April where we would not be meeting. And then at the ending of Othello, which hopefully we should finish around the 5th of May, there won't be a whole lot of time left. But I did want to talk about Shakespeare's tragic comedies. These are known as Shakespeare's last plays, where he basically blended the elements of tragedy and the elements of comedy. And his most famous is called The Tempest. It's thought to be Shakespeare's last play that he wrote before his retirement. So I've assigned that as an extra credit for you, where at this point I've got 2 classes that are devoted to The Tempest that we could talk about. Again, you're not going to necessarily be required to read that play, but you're encouraged to, and it is a possibility for a paper topic, and it will be a possibility for a final exam topic. And basically, you can see that our final exam is the last day of class, and that is on the 14th, May 14th, and I will be giving you 24 hours in which to take that examination and return it to my email. And it's also the very last day you can hand in your second paper, which would probably be devoted to either Shakespeare's history play, Richard II, or Shakespeare's tragedies, either Macbeth or Othello. Though, as I indicated, The Tempest is also a possibility. And I definitely encourage early papers, but this would obviously be the very last date that you could hand in that paper. So this gives you a holistic view of the semester, and I don't expect you to remember all of this, but of course you've got it in written form and you can always rewatch this video. But hopefully I've answered your questions, but if I have not, please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about the class. So what's left is our discussion form question. And as I had indicated earlier, and you can see this in the notes below as well, that our discussion form question is going to be for you to briefly introduce yourself to the class. And you're encouraged to upload video audio, but you're not required to. And I wanted to end with 3 quotes that I think sum up Shakespeare nicely. The first, and this is in our syllabus and course outline, Shakespeare's works have become our secular Bible. That's by Gary Taylor. The second, Shakespeare's popularity is due to his extraordinary facility for language, his memorable characters, and his wonderful stories. Roger Pringle. And the third, by Alexander Annexed. Don't ask for simple answers from Shakespeare. Just believe in his ability to put into one play a whole world with all of its contradictions, contrasts, and problems. So with that, I hope you're doing well. I'm doing well, and you can expect another video from me by 8 a.m. on Wednesday, where we can begin talking about Shakespearean biography. Take care. Bye-bye.